Greetings, world historians. Matthew Smith here. Today we're looking at one of the great themes of world history, underlining this week's theme of comparing world societies. You might not think to look at this quadrupedal mammal, but this beautiful Bactrian camel was once the ship of the desert, connecting civilizations, religions, and peoples across the breadth of the Silk Road, from East Asia to the Mediterranean. Arguably today's equivalent of this remarkable beast, which is found abundantly represented in the art of China, would be the ubiquitous grey fleet of Amazon trucks which we see every day plying their commerce along the interstates of modern America. But I think you can see from that comparison how far we've come in some respects. Of course, the term Silk Road is also misleading and was not in use at the time that historians use to apply it to. The original term Seidenstrasse was first coined by the German archaeologist Ferdinand von Richthofen in 1877, but it soon took on and was translated into English in its familiar form. Although the quote-unquote Silk Road was not a single coherent highway in the sense that we might experience today driving, say, into Kentucky on I-75, but rather a connected network of exchange, information and trade, this map nevertheless does give some indication as to the size of this early arena of globalization. Paradoxically, the Silk Road did not develop along the path of least resistance, but spanned some of the harshest terrain on the entire planet. As this satellite image of the Taklamakan Desert, surrounded by mountains, shows, the challenges for overland trade were substantial and sometimes deadly, which in turn begs the question, why were people willing to risk their lives and limbs and endure such great hardship in the name of trade? The answer is surprising. The humble silkworm seen feasting here on some mulberry leaves might seem an unglamorous subject for globalization, and yet the beautiful silk fabrics woven from the fibers of these caterpillars turned out to be the central luxury commodity of the Chinese economy. Despite growing demand in the Roman Empire and elsewhere in the ancient world, China maintained a monopoly on the production of silk textiles which lasted thousands of years and illustrates the vital importance of intellectual property, as we would now know it, to the wealth of nations. Believe it or not, at the height of this silk empire, the punishment for smuggling even just a handful of these worms beyond the borders of China was death. To recap then, the foundations of the Silk Road, which connected Rome to China across the vast wildernesses of Central Asia, depended as much on natural environment as on the intentional design of human societies. Although growing networks of trade had existed in Asia as early as the Persian King's Road, and even before then to the 4th millennium BC, development of technologies such as silk textiles, which were a byproduct of the silkworm, or indeed the domestication of horses, donkeys and camels, all of which were native to Central Asia, determined the course of history. Of all of these factors, China's hunger for horses made the biggest impact. The horse was valued in China as both a weapon of war and a symbol of wealth and prestige, but in order to breed horses, extensive grasslands were required. Such pasture could not be found in the densely populated river valley heartlands of south and central China. And so from the earliest years of the Han Dynasty, Chinese emperors engaged directly with the nomadic barbarians of the Central Asian plains in order to forge alliances and secure a steady supply of valued horses. Over time, this relationship between the sedentary Chinese civilization and surrounding nomadic peoples developed into the familiar tribute relations depicted here and in much later Chinese art. However, we should not read this painting, which is essentially a piece of Chinese propaganda, at face value. In fact, the relationship between civilization and barbarism in China and Central Asia was no less complex than we have seen in other parts of the world. Consider, for example, the relations between Greeks and Persians described by Herodotus, or those between ancient Rome and Germanic Europe described by the Roman historian Tacitus. Although nomadic groups such as the Xiongnu described in early Chinese sources willingly played a subservient role, Their prestige and eventually power were enhanced by association, intermarriage, and eventual conquest, in some cases, of the ancient Chinese kingdom. And probably the key example here would be the eventual Mongol dynasty, which took over in China in the 12th century. So that's all for now, but I hope you're enjoying these videos. Stay posted next time when we'll be exploring in further detail some of these Eurasian empires. But until next time, take care.